Our First Amendment is a cherished right, the right to speak our minds, regardless of whether the government endorses our speech or not. But what if the government feels the need to compel you to say things that you don't want to say? Well, that is what my next guest faced, and he received his day in court today after being fired from resisting compelled speech. Peter Vlaming, a former Virginia school teacher, and his attorney, Chris Schandevel, join me now to share his story. Peter and Chris, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Joseph.
So glad to have you. Now, Peter, we'll get to Chris in a moment about some of the legal arguments, but give us some background on how your case came to be.
Sure, no problem. 4 years ago, I explained to my school administration how I was handling the fact that one of my students, a 14-year-old girl, had decided to adopt a male identity. I explained that, okay, I got to have this student. I've had her for 2 years. She's a great student. I like her a lot. Glad she's in my class. I'm adopting her new masculine name. I've even had all my students choose new French names for the beginning of the year. We have French names in French class as part of the cultural lesson. And I had them all choose new French names. This is French year 2. So she wouldn't be singled out. I'm trying to accommodate her as best as possible. And I explained to my administration, okay, I'm using the new masculine name, but and I'm avoiding feminine pronouns in her presence, and to not be provocative, not to provoke her, but I'm not using masculine pronouns either because I can't, because she's not a boy. I respect the fact that she can believe the way she wants about human nature, but I don't share her belief. I don't share her family's belief about the fluidity of gender. And the administration responded by turning up the heat and saying, well, you will use masculine pronouns to refer to the student, even when the student isn't present, even when there are no students present, even if it's just colleagues at the school. And if we think that you're using the new name, even though it's a masculine name, when you could be using a masculine pronoun, we'll fire you. And I was, it's kind of deer in the headlights absurd, but that was the ultimatum, a written ultimatum that was given to me.
And so how long did it take from that ultimatum from then until you ultimately were separated from your job?
Well, it happened pretty quickly because there's a spark to the powder keg. It was Halloween 2018. I was doing a lesson on the catacombs of Paris, which are tunnels under the city where they stacked up bones that were exhumed from overflowing grave sites and cemeteries in Paris. And we had a set of virtual reality goggles, about maybe 20, 25 of them. And we were going to take a virtual tour of the catacombs. But in order to do that, you had to be divided into two. I divided the students into pairs so that one student could wear the virtual reality goggles, and the other student can make sure they weren't bumping into things. And we went out into the hallway where there are less obstacles, and I'm supervising the activity. And I noticed that the student in question, her partner isn't paying attention, and she's about to walk into a wall. And I shouted out as a reflex, "Don't let her hit the wall." And the fact that I used her, which I inadvertently used because I had been avoiding using feminine pronouns in class, caused how can I say, une vive réaction,
Okay.
a violent reaction, not a violent reaction, but by the end of the day, I was let go.
It caused a reaction. For sure. Now, I want to bring in your attorney, Chris Schandevel from the Alliance Defending Freedom, who's representing you in court. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. And we've just heard a bit of the facts of the story. You're making legal arguments in court. Tell us about the hearing today. Tell us what you're arguing on Peter's behalf.
Sure. So we were in the Virginia Supreme Court today, raising Peter's case and his claims. Then our primary claims are that, Peter's case is a case about compelled speech. He wasn't fired for anything that he said or for anything that he did. He was fired simply for what he couldn't say. in good conscience. The school attempted to force him basically to endorse their ideological views about sex and gender identity by trying to force him to use biologically incorrect pronouns, and he just couldn't do that, so they fired him. Constitutionally, that makes his case very strong under our constitutional free speech protections and constitutional protections for the free exercise of religion. You know, when any of us, you know, it's one thing to tell a teacher, you know, there are certain viewpoints that we're fine with you expressing outside the classroom, but you know, when you're in the classroom, you need to focus on French, you need to focus on math. But to take it to the next step and to say you actually have to affirmatively mouth these words that you fundamentally disagree with, or else we'll fire you, that raises the stakes in terms of the constitutional violation. So that's the case that we were making today in front of the Virginia Supreme Court, and we were very pleased with how the arguments went.
And you may have answered the question, but in about 30 seconds, how do you feel after the arguments? Are you confident in victory?
So I never like to make predictions based on how oral arguments go, but I will say that we felt very good about the questions the justices were asking. They were very engaged. They seemed to really understand, one, just how important this case is, and then two, you know, just how serious of a violation it is to actually compel someone to speak messages that violate their core beliefs. So we got great questions from the justices. And like I said, I don't like to make predictions, but we do feel very good coming out of the argument today.
That's great news. Peter, I want to bring you back on for the last word here in about 30 seconds. This has cost you a lot in your life. Would you do it again?
Yeah, there are some hills that are worth dying on, and this is one of them. It was a pretty clear cut for me what needed to happen. That this isn't something I could go along with. So yes, well, I would do it again.
We're encouraged to hear that. We're encouraged by your bravery and your courage, because really when you win in this case, and we pray that you will, we all win. So Peter Vlaming, Chris Schandevel, thank you both for your time today and your efforts in this battle.
Thank you so much.